welcome Letje Malle with They Who Must Be Named, actors of press freedom in the magical and muggle world, joining us from Germany.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, then let's start. Welcome to this presentation, as Laurie said, titled They Who Must Be Named, Actors of Press Freedom in the Magical and the Muggle World. My name is Letje. I'm joining you today from the north of Germany, which is why I am attending online as all of you. It's currently 8 p.m. in the evening, so I'm trying to stay concentrated. I studied media management and journalism, and for my bachelor's thesis, I explored how journalism is portrayed in the world of Harry Potter, and then compared that to the real-world practice of journalism in Germany. So my research focused on the laws that empower and restrict journalism and on the structures and values that shape how press operates. And the result of this project was a 4-part podcast designed to educate people about the media system and highlight the importance of free press in any society. But for today's presentation, I've decided to broaden the scope for you. So instead of solely focusing on Germany, we're going to travel around the world, explore different countries and how they treat press freedom. And naturally, we will also visit the magical world, since it offers fascinating parallels and some lessons for our own. But just to start with, and out of interest, what do you think, every one of you, how many times is journalism mentioned in all of the Harry Potter books, from book 1 to 7? Anytime, articles, interviews, the way society reacts to this. Just give me a few numbers in the chat and let's see what you think, how often we're gonna hear more than, yeah, definitely more than 30, more than 200 times. Yes, of course. Yeah, perfect. Oh, we're getting closer. Yes. Anyone else? Ooh, 500. Okay, we're between that. Actually, it is about 400 times that journalism is mentioned. Just to give you a short proof, of course, I've worked with the books. This is the German Goblet of Fire version, and I've got all my sticky notes in here. So 400 times that journalism is mentioned. So journalism has to be interesting and important in the world of Harry Potter. So let's dive just into it. What is journalism to start with? Naturally, we encounter journalism every day, in every country, in every language, and yes, even in every world. But when asked what journalism actually does or should do, many people find it hard to give a very clear answer. So let's start with this one. The task of journalists is to gather information, to organize it, and then to publish it in various forms. Might it be text, videos, or images? Journalism is also about selecting what is relevant, reviewing it, and researching it carefully, verifying facts, and prioritizing what truly matters. This is what journalism should do. If there is good journalism, there's also bad journalism. So after all receiving information through divination in a crystal ball, it hardly qualifies as a proper research, speaking from a Muggle perspective. And inventing facts certainly doesn't either. But if journalists actually work properly, they ensure that society stays informed about the very important things happening around us. And that means, in the very end, also democracy. Because only when people are well informed can they make thoughtful decisions and cast meaningful votes. And I'm just doing a little theory part in the beginning, and then we're diving straight into the magical world. To ensure that journalists can truly work this way, there are laws protecting press freedom, and they are essential, and they go often hand in hand with freedom of speech. So I've brought a few examples for you to look at how different countries anchor this right in their constitutions. In the United States of America, most of you might know, it is part of the First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of speech or freedom of press. In Germany, where I come from, our constitution states freedom of press and freedom of reporting by means of broadcasts and films shall be guaranteed. Let's take a look at the Republic of China. The laws protect freedom of speech and of the press. And last but not least, in Russia, the constitution declares freedom of thought and speech and freedom of the mass media. So there's a lot of freedom, apparently, by law. We're going to find out later if this is true or not. But at some point in history, all of these countries recognized how vital it is for the press to work freely and independently as a cornerstone of a functioning democracy. If we take a look at the magical world of Harry Potter, well, freedom of press is virtually non-existent, at least by law. There is no known legislation that protects press freedom in the visiting world. Of course, we do know that laws exist in Harry Potter. Think, for example, of the decree for reasonable restriction of underage sorcery, or the whole Department of Magical Law Enforcement, which enforces magical rules and regulations. But when it comes to the press, there are no written laws guaranteeing or even mentioning its freedom or its restriction. But of course, there are a few things that we can reasonably assume by just looking at what we know and what we read and what we see. So clearly, the wizarding world is no short on headlines. We see countless headlines and articles about a flying Fort Anglia that horrifies unsuspecting muggles, the break-in at Gringotts during Harry's very first year, of course, the grand announcement of Gilderoy Lockhart's latest masterpiece, Magical Me. Later on, there is the dramatic escape of Sirius Black from Azkaban and the infamous coverage of the Tree Visit tournament. Proof enough that the Daily Prophet and the Witch Weekly never miss a chance for a good scandal, and I think you will come up with another few examples of articles that you have read or seen over the films or over the books. And interestingly enough, we do find examples of ministry critical reporting, like after the appearance of the Dark Mark at the 422nd Quidditch World Cup. So there seems to be a functioning press, and it even seems possible for journalists to publish ministry critical articles without immediately fearing a visit from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, or even worse, a journey to Azkaban. And here she is, ladies and gentlemen, the woman largely responsible for all the press coverage, Rita Skeeter. Or fun fact, in Germany she is called Rita Kimkorn. Journalist not only for the Daily Prophet, but also a very proud contributor to the Witch Weekly. And now at this point, I would like to clarify that we will not be diving into the ethics of her journalism today. That is a topic for another day, or for anyone especially interested, one that I have covered in my bachelor's thesis on journalism in the magical world. But I would like to take this opportunity to quote Arthur Weasley after the Quidditch World Cup when he cites the Daily Prophet itself. Ministry blunders, culprits not apprehended, lax security, dark visits running unchecked, and national disgrace, which is yet again positive because, again, journalists seem to be able to work freely in the magical world. Or so we think, because when we take a closer look at this timeline, there is a clear turning point. The year of 1994, which is also the year of Lord Voldemort's return. Until that moment, journalism in Harry Potter does what it should do. In most cases, writing about important things, informing society with truthful information. In most cases. But from the moment of Lord Voldemort's return, the wizarding press undergoes an astonishing transformation, or perhaps we could even say a rather dark transfiguration. Because when you look at these articles, suddenly Harry Potter is no longer the boy who lived, but the boy who lies. Cornelius Fudge insists that all is well, conveniently ignoring the small detail that a dark supremacist lord has returned to terrorize the world. And Dumbledore, once the voice of reason, is suddenly portrayed as daft and dangerous. And ultimately, it all leads to a point where society becomes severely underinformed, fed with false information, and is systemically misled. Oh, it's late in the evening. As a result, Lord Voldemort is really able to return in his full strength almost and nearly achieves his goal, spreading terror, taking innocent lives all the way, which is bad. And all of this leads us to the very interesting question, one that brings us back to the central theme of this presentation: who are the true actors of press freedom, or perhaps even more revealing, who are not? In other words, what actually needs to happen to restrict the freedom of press, what conditions must exist for journalism to no longer be able to fulfill its purpose, to inform, to question, and to hold power accountable. Let's begin with one of the most direct ways to limit press freedom: banning certain media outlets or revoking their permission to publish, distribute, or even be read. For example, in the United States of America, the access for the Associated Press was restricted to the White House earlier this year, a very clear signal how fragile media can be, even in a so-called democracy. In Russia, the government revoked the license of the independent newspaper Novaya Gazeta, a publication long known for its criticism reporting on Kremlin. And, of course, in the magical world, we see something strikingly similar. The Ministry of Magic threatens to expel students found in the possession of the Quibbler after it is published by Harry Potter, and over the interview that he gives about the return of Lord Voldemort. Our next example, an equally dangerous method of control, is forcing to write the press what the government wants it to write. Take Hungary, for instance. In May of this year, a member of the parliament submitted a draft law that would allow fines to be imposed on any media outlet or organization receiving foreign funding. And this proposal would effectively leave independent media with two grim choices: either become nationalized or slowly starve financially. It is a textbook example of economic pressure used as political control. And in the magical world, we see, again, a similar tactic. Luna Lovegood is kidnapped to force her father, Xenophilius Lovegood, to publish what the ministry, under Lord Voldemort's influence, wants the public to read. And at this point, I would like to dive a little bit deeper into the why it was so easy to silence and manipulate the visiting press. Well, simply because the magical media landscape was incredibly narrow to begin with. There was the Daily Prophet, which quickly became the main ministry-aligned outlet, a bit like the state newspaper. And then on the fringes, there was like the Quibbler, a small, eccentric, family-run magazine that most people didn't even take seriously until it started publishing real information, and then it was silenced real quick. So when the Daily Prophet fell under the control and the Quibbler was banned, the entire flow of information in the wizarding world was essentially shut down. There were no alternative outlets, no regional papers, no wizarding equivalent of social media or whatsoever, no journalistic watchdogs, no checks and balances. So in short, no diversity of media landscape, and without diversity, freedom of the press becomes extremely easy to destroy. And the ministry didn't have to close dozens of newspapers or imprison hundreds of journalists as you have to do today. They only had to control just one. And once the Daily Prophet began printing what the ministry wanted to hear, that all is well, that Harry Potter lies, that Dumbledore's daft is dangerous, the majority of the wizarding public had no reason to doubt it because they did not have any other information. And this is bad and wonderful at the same time. It's very well executed, but in a very bad way. So I just wanted to show you this slide because of the wording. In 2023, Russian authorities declared the Moscow Times an undesirable organization. And the wording is again striking familiar because in the magical world, Harry Potter himself becomes undesirable number one, hunted, discredited, and erased from public narrative by a government that fears the truth he represents. In both worlds, the term undesirable becomes a powerful instrument of control. That just as a little side note. And I thought you might like this because I thought, putting the pictures aside, it's just similar. It's truly striking. On the one side, we do have Donald Trump during his first presidency, discrediting some media by labeling it as fake news. On the other side, we do have Cornelius Fudge, who discredits Harry Potter in much the same way, turning the boy who lived into the boy who lies. Both leaders, magical and Muggle alike, use the same strategy to undermine trust in those who report the truth, so that their own version of reality becomes that one the people do believe in, because they have no other choice. Last but not least, I would like to share an excerpt from the 2024 roundup by Reporters Without Borders with you, just to give you a few numbers. And have in mind, this is 2024. The 2025 version is not out. 55 journalists were held hostage. 95 journalists went missing. 550 journalists were detained and 54 journalists were killed simply because they were doing what journalists are meant to do, their job. So it is not a story from the past. It is not a story from a faraway place. This is what's happening right now, worldwide. It is a real problem. It is affecting not only those who report the truth, we have to keep that in mind, but also us who depend on the truth. So what can we do? How can we become actors of press freedom? So we can pay for good journalism no matter how many galleons it costs to keep high quality reporting alive. If we don't pay them, they cannot work. It's a very easy thing. We can stay informed and actually read the news, and read a lot of news, maybe even as regularly as Vernon Dursley, who is surprisingly enough remarkably well informed. He reads the newspapers all the time. I mean, he shit talks it all the time, but he reads it. And we can take a page out of Hermione Granger's book by speaking up and by protesting and using our voices when something is wrong or feels wrong. We can vote for those who protect the press freedom, who do not fear open discussion or critical questions, and we can stand up when journalists are threatened or silenced and call out injustice when we see it. In both the magical and the muggle world, the truth only survives when people choose to protect it. And I have like a quote I scribbled a lot of down at the former presentation. There was a good quote. Voldemort may be fictional, but the devil is very real. I don't believe in the devil, but I believe in people who make press freedom go away. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm so happy to discuss the questions now, if you have any. Ah, yeah.